Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for What's New Snippets with SEPC. My name is Kristen from Eurasic Label, and I'm a proud SEPC board member and your education chair. Today, we have Anna Marie Roehring from 210 Analytics and Clark Roper from SEPC to give us what's new in sustainability. Take it away, guys.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. And yes, we had a lot of fun doing some primary research among consumers, asking them anything and everything relative to what is new within the produce supply chain. So one of our first topics was the area of sustainability, but we also wanted to put it in perspective because we know that it's not just sustainability that matters when people decide on which fruits and vegetables to purchase. And sure enough, the old wisdom in produce has always been the eyes decide, and 42% of consumers said quality and freshness matters most when deciding what to buy. Then 19% said it was price that drives their decision. 18% said sustainability, and that was in the widest sense. So not just environmental sustainability, but also taking care of the community, waste, what have you. And then 22% just could not choose, and they said all three are equally important. What's really jumping out at me is that 18% said sustainability, 19% said price. That's nearly equal. So I think there's opportunity in telling that story a little bit better than we are currently doing. We also wanted to look at who drives the dollar today and who drives tomorrow, what matters to them. So when we looked at today's heavy buyer, the ones that really dominate today's spending, that's Gen X and boomers, by and large, they look at quality and freshness, at 53% saying that's what drives my decision versus just 17% sustainability. Then when we switch and look at where the growth is, which is really among Gen Z and millennials, they really emphasize sustainability very heavily. So you see that 26% said sustainability matters most and 33% said quality freshness. So those are very close together. And that really means that sustainability, its role will only grow. And I think that's an exciting opportunity for retailers. Clark, can you weigh in on that?
Sure, I'd love to. It's a very exciting piece of information. So as we look at, as you referred to, the changing of the guard from who's spending the money in produce, we'll always also have to look at the changing of the guard in a sense of how we look at strategy from a produce retailer. So we've spent so much time over the years focused on price, and you mentioned freshness and quality and things that the consumers can walk into the store and feel and sense and see. And now the big challenge is going to be around becoming a storyteller and being able to tell that message of sustainability. We saw a lot of that at Southern Innovations when we walked the aisles and we saw all kinds of new packaging and different labels and different ways to not only tell the story of sustainability, but to put it into practice. Some interesting things that popped out to me were obviously Appeal Sciences and the presentation from Hazel Technologies, finding new ways to reduce, reuse, recycle. So I think that conversation is going to continue to become bigger and more important. And we'll probably see and hear a lot of that at our show in Florida at the Southern Exposure in March.
Yeah, Clark, I'm glad you mentioned the actual practical applicability of this and how people are working on it, because that was a really interesting area to me that came out of this study. And we first asked the question, if you think about what brand of produce you buy, what retailer you go to, or what restaurant you decide to eat out at, how much do these following things matter? And we looked at food waste, packaging waste, we looked at social responsibility, so things like fair pay, inclusion, diversity. And then our last area was giving back to the community. And by and large, 5 to 6 in 10 consumers said that these things are very important to them and in fact can start to drive their purchasing decision, whether we're looking at a brand, a restaurant, or a retailer. But then came the absolute shocker to me in the study. And that was, okay, so now we know it's important, but how are we measuring up? What are you seeing out in the marketplace? And that's where we saw, with the exception of giving back to the community, where brands, retailers, and restaurants scored really well, we see very few people recognize initiatives that are out in the marketplace relative to food waste, package waste, and social responsibility. In fact, 6, 7, 8 out of 10 shoppers said, you know what, I have never seen that before. So to me, that is just an enormous opportunity to better highlight all the things that are absolutely happening in the supply chain today, regardless of where you sit. Kristen, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Before we get started, a little personal anecdote that I saw while I was ordering Uber Eats last night, and how this is being applied to food service. Husband and I ordering this, and I wasn't too happy with what I had got, so it asked me, what were you unhappy with? And so one of the options was unsustainable packaging. And so I thought that was very interesting that that's an option for something that you can report back on this food service. So how can we see some of this in retail? How can we be communicating it? Looking first at the ability to connect your digital and your physical space. Like Anna Marie said, people are very interested into these things, but they're not seeing them, they're not hearing about them. So how can we do that? There's limited space on your package. Make sure you're using things like QR codes. Consumers are a lot more familiar with the use of these now after the pandemic. So connect that information, give them more detail on what you're doing for the environment. My other tip is you're looking at retail commitments that are coming up in 2025, 2030. They're going to be here quick. So retailers, make sure that you're asking your grower shipper partners, your supplier partners like packaging, what they are currently doing for sustainability, and make sure you're taking credit for that. What are you doing for water supply, energy conservation? Also looking at what other options there are in terms of recycling friendly and recycled content packaging. I know that there's a lot out there, and there's a lot more in the works in the supply chain that's going to be coming through. We already have a lot of grower shipper partners who are using recycling friendly labels, so that way packages can be more easily recycled. And I encourage everybody to ask their suppliers what they have.
Yeah, what great tips and information, Kristen. And I also want to point out to everybody that this was a survey for 10, 15 minutes. We asked consumers about everything that happens on the planet, the farm, the store, on the menu. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. And you can go to the SEPC website. You'll find a YouTube link there, and you can watch the entire session.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, thank you so much for bringing us this information. I think it's going to be really helpful for us moving forward. And to our viewers, look for more content just like this. Hopefully it'll add some value to you from our innovation and education pillars from the SEPC, and come see us in Orlando in March at the Southern Exposure.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any suggestions of topics that you think should be part of our What's New study at Southern Innovations, be sure to reach out to myself, Anna Marie, or Clark, and we'll be sure to take those suggestions into account for What's New 2022 launched at Southern Exposure. Thanks everyone for joining us.